Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining today's webinar. I am Miwa Fuji, Terraform Community Manager in the engineering team at Megaport, and I'll be your host. Welcome to Megaport Infrastructure as Code IaC, automating global networks at DevOps speed. Today, Mark Austin will cover the fundamentals of the Megaport Terraform provider. The goal is to make you comfortable testing the tool in the staging portal environment. Alex and Phil from engineering team are available to answer your questions via the QA panel. Before we start, just a little housekeeping from our end. We are recording today's webinar and we will post it to Megaport Docs website. All participants will be muted. Please use the QA panel located at the bottom of your screen to submit questions. Please post questions via the QA panel. At any time, we will reply during or after the presentation. If you are experiencing any Zoom issues, first try logging out and back in. If the problem persists, please contact Zoom support directly. I will now turn the microphone over to Mark. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Mark Austin, Solution Architect at Megaport based in Sydney, Australia. I work with customers on designing, architecting, implementing Megaport products to build connectivity to cloud, between clouds and globally. So thanks for joining today. We're going to start off just with some fundamentals around what is Megaport and Terraform, and I'll just share my screen. Okay, so, okay. I guess just starting off here, we're going to use the Megaport docs as a reference. So Megaport documents everything at docs.megaport.com. So we use this internally for most of what we do, and you can build everything with Megaport by using these docs. So if we go to the Terraform section, and I'll just click on Overview. So just a brief intro to what is Megaport. Megaport is a network as a service provider. So Megaport has a global private network that extends into 26 countries. The infrastructure exists in data centers, so over 1,000 data centers globally. The network extends into those, so you can connect physically at 110, 100 gig, now 400 gig interfaces into the fabric. You can also deploy network functions on our compute platform, which is available around 130 plus locations globally. And that compute platform is located close to cloud on-ramps. So you can do multi-cloud connectivity at very high speed, at very low latency. And one of the key things with Megaport is it's all driven through a self-service portal, very much like cloud-like you would deploy something with AWS. You would use the AWS console. It's the same idea with Megaport. So you can go to the Megaport portal and deploy services instantly, and they're all up and running within 1 to 2 minutes. And given that you can do that through the portal, we also have complete automation through a Megaport API and also Terraform. So you can deploy, change, manage, delete services programmatically. Okay, so in terms of what is Terraform, so if you're new to coding, Terraform is a infrastructure as code tool. So it at a high level abstracts out the complexity of automating infrastructure, and infrastructure being compute, storage, And in Megaport world, that's networking connectivity. And it allows you to write the code in a very high level human readable way. So it's very, very easy to use and manage. And some of the features with Terraform include declarative. So that means it's very much you say what you want it to do. So it's not like coding where you have to write hundreds of lines to do something. You can write a few lines to get something done. It's cloud agnostic, so it works across all the clouds, and it's really vendor agnostic, I guess. So it's a tool which is applied in many different environments. Um, it allows you to start using automation, and that allows you to increase the speed at which you deploy and manage your infrastructure, but also allows or reduces errors in deploying services. It tracks the state that you deploy, so it knows what you have deployed. So if you go and make a change, it only changes what needs to be changed. It doesn't redeploy everything, and that functionality is built into Terraform, and that's what makes it really cool. Is that you can just go and change one thing, and it will only change that. It won't delete and recreate the service. And there's a lot of modules out there that simplify the coding, so you can just pull in a module. You don't have to write the actual Terraform code. So that's out there in the community. So Megaport, the way Megaport works with Terraform is Megaport writes its own Terraform provider, and that Terraform provider interacts with the Megaport API. So you download the Megaport provider to run with Terraform. And you would do the same with a cloud provider like AWS or Microsoft Azure. You would download their Terraform provider. So that's a little bit around Megaport, Terraform, Megaport Terraform provider. How you get started with Terraform and Megaport. So first thing is you need to understand Megaport services. So we offer different ways of using Megaport. You can use a port in a data center. You can use our virtualized products, which are Megaport Cloud Router or Megaport Virtual Edge. You can then deploy services on those what we call core access products, and those services are deployed using a virtual cross connect, and that is the point-to-point connectivity component of Megaport. So we're not going to go into that today. We have a lot of content on Megaport YouTube channel which talks about the basics of Megaport services, and also in the docs we explain how that all works. So I'll jump to the next step here, which is Megaport has two environments. One of those obviously being the production environment. That's where you deploy real services. And we also have a staging environment or a test environment. And the staging environment is a simulated environment. So you don't deploy real services. It's a simulated front end. So you can go to the staging portal and deploy services using that portal, but they don't deploy for real. You're just walking through a simulated environment. But the great thing with the staging environment, you can code against that with Terraform, and you can also code against it with the API. So you can test your code before you run it in production. So we'll see that today. The next thing there is you need to create a Megaport account. Obviously, you can do that by just going to megaport.com, and top right-hand corner, you can create an account and you can start using Megaport instantly. If you want to use the staging environment, you will need to wait 24 hours for that account to sync into the staging environment. The next thing is you need to add users to the account. So if you create the account, you'll be the first user, but you can then add additional users to the account. Sorry, 1 minute. The next thing is to interface or interact with Megaport from a programming perspective. You need to create an API key, and you do that in the portal. and I will show you that right now. So let's go to the staging portal, and that's at portal-staging.megaport.com. The production portal is portal.megaport.com. So we'll go to dash staging. I've already logged in, so we'll jump straight in to the environment. And the thing is, when you go to the staging environment, you'll see this yellow line. So you'll know you're in the stage environment. So that's very important. And everything here is simulated. You can deploy things. You're not going to get charged. Nothing real gets deployed in the back end, but it's exactly the same as interfacing with the real environment. So to create an API key, it's a matter of going to API key generator, entering a name. We want it to be company admin. So company admin allows you to create and change, delete services, and we generate a key. So you get the API key and you get the API key secret. So you copy those for use in Terraform. And I'll close that off now. So that's just how you create the API key. So very important step. The next thing is you need to install Terraform, either however you're going to do it on your laptop or on a server somewhere. You need to install that, and that really depends on what environment you're using, and that will determine how you install it. So the HashiCorp page runs through a lot of different ways to install Terraform depending on your environment. So that's referenced here on the Megaport page. And then you need some way to edit the code, and pretty popular code editor is Visual Studio Code, and that's what I use, but you can use whatever works for you. So that's how you get started, and we document all of that here under getting started. The next thing is what are you going to deploy on Megaport, or what type of design? So we have references for that here. So deployment scenarios, common multi-cloud scenarios. This we have here 1 to 13. This walks through most of the scenarios that we see our customers deploy, starting from a very simple, you're connected in a data center to the Megaport Fabric port with a virtual connection across the Megaport Fabric to a cloud provider on-ramp. So in this case, this is AWS Direct Connect, Microsoft Express Route, Google Partner Interconnect, and Oracle Fast Connect. So these are the most common scenarios in terms of cloud connectivity. With Megaport Terraform, you can deploy anything on our fabric. So you can deploy data center to data center, just layer 2 connectivity. You can deploy data center to cloud. You can deploy a standalone Megaport Cloud Router, which is what I'm going to deploy today. So something like scenario 5. So you're not present in a data center at all. You're just joining 2 clouds together across the Megaport Fabric using the Megaport Cloud Router. So the really cool thing with the Megaport Cloud Router is it's deployed instantly. You can build the private connectivity between the clouds, but it's very highly automated. So from a Terraform perspective, you can deploy all of the functionality of the router using Terraform. Versus, say, if you're going to use our other product called Megaport Virtual Edge, you will deploy your own either firewall, virtual router, say from Cisco, etc., on there, and we can, from a Terraform perspective, you can still deploy the topology and the infrastructure from Megaport perspective, but then you need to configure the actual device, and that may be an additional step, automation step, which is outside the scope of Megaport. So with Megaport Cloud Router, it's completely automatable using Terraform from start to finish. So these are here to guide you depending on what topology you like. And we have referenced Terraform code for each of these. So if we go to the Megaport GitHub page and go to Terraform provider Megaport, you'll see here there's examples. And basically, we have all different type of examples here. So like pretty much every combination you could think of. But the ones we're looking for here are multi-cloud scenarios. And that's the 1 to 13 here, which I showed you earlier, that are reference here. So we're going to look at scenario 5. And if we look at that, we click on that, we can see example code. So it's in one file. From a Terraform perspective, there's lots of different ways you can structure your files. You usually break it out from a manageability perspective. But for the example, you can just deploy everything in one file. But I will break it out into 2 separate files in the example. So the first thing is you declare Terraform the required providers. So this is the Megaport provider and the version of the provider. To look at what is the latest version, you can go to the Terraform registry, the Megaport page specifically, and you can see the latest version here is 146. So we'll update that when we deploy it to 146. Within the provider definition, you specify the access key and secret API key, which we looked at earlier, how to deploy that. There's just a default here, accept purchase terms, true. And environment, you declare, if you want to deploy it in staging, you declare staging. If you want to deploy it in production, you declare production. So that's the base code that you need to get started. And then you go into the specifics of what you're going to deploy. So I'm going to deploy a single MCR in Singapore. So this is the description of the MCR, the speed, throughput speed, which is 1,000 megabits per second, so that's 1 gig. And then you've got the location. So this is the location of the compute. And you can there's a few different ways of getting the ID. So I've declared the ID here in a data block, which is location 1, which is location ID 36, which is Equinix Singapore SG1. So there's a few different ways. First of all, you need to determine where the MCR is available. You can look at that in the portal. So I'll just go back to the portal. So we look at create MCR and we go Singapore. You can see there is 7 locations that Megaport has compute in those data centers to run the Megaport Cloud Router. They're all equal. They're pretty much, you could think of it like AWS availability zones. You choose one, and then if you're going to deploy another MCR, you choose a different location. So that's, we just expose the data center location currently. But basically you will choose one of those. In terms of how you get the ID, so if we're looking at this ID here, you can do that by, if I just jump back to the Megaport docs, under getting started, you will see location IDs. So we can search for Singapore here and just double checking my code is right. So we've got 36, so that's Equinix SG1, and 36, so that is correct. Okay, the other way is you can do a API call to get the locations. If you wanted to completely automate that function, there is an API call that will display the location ID. So what I'll do is let's take some of this code. There's a couple of different ways you can do this. You can just download this code here, for example. If you would like to download it, you can do that. I can just copy it into Visual Studio Code. So I've got it here. First thing I need to do is create a folder to run this code in. So I've got a few different examples here. So what I'm going to do, just create a new folder. Let's call it webinar. And I'll just chuck that, I'll leave it there, top level. And go back to Visual Studio Code and I'll open that folder. Okay. And let's create the first file, which will be the provider.tf, which will declare the Terraform provider details and the API keys. So let's jump back here. First of all, we'll just grab these blocks of code. Okay, and we'll change that to 146, which is the latest Megaport Terraform provider. And I've got some keys existing for the staging environment, which I'll enter here. Okay, and we'll change that to staging. And that's done, and I'll save that. The next step is we want to create another file. Depending on what some people call it main, you can break it out into specific vendors, like you can have megaport.tf, then you can have AWS, Microsoft, etc., or you can have it all in one file. It doesn't really matter. Terraform works out the order of which everything needs to get deployed. So it doesn't really matter. It just however you want to manage your files. So we'll just jump back to the example here and we'll grab this config and we've got a data block. It's a Megaport location. You can call it here whatever you want. You could call it SG1 or you can call it Singapore 1 or I've just got location 1. It's ID 36. And then we've got the resource block for the MCR. So resource Megaport MCR. I've called it MCR underscore 1 sing. And then we've got description MCR1 sing, port speed 1000. We're referencing the location. You could just enter 36 in here if you want, or you can reference this data block. So data.megaport location1.id. Contract term months equals 1 is actually no term. So it's a minute by minute. So I can deploy the Megaport MCR and run it for 3 hours, move data between clouds, and then destroy it. So that's one thing with Terraform, which is really cool. And then diversity zone red. So Megaport has diversity zones within each of the data centers, and we're going to deploy this one in the red diversity zone. So I'll save that. And that is pretty much all we're going to do from a demo perspective is just deploy this MCR. So I'll jump over to the command line and go to that folder. And we can see the megaport.tf and provider.tf files in there. So we'll just initialize Terraform, and part of this initialization is it'll download the Megaport provider, and you can see it's doing that, and it's successfully downloaded and initialized, which is great. And we'll have a few more files in there. Which you can see which Terraform is created. Okay, so the next step is to just run a plan against the code, and this will display any issues with the code that syntax issues, anything like that. But you can see here, after running the plan, it's gone through each of the lines of code and it's all looking good. So we can go ahead and deploy that. So the next step is to do Terraform apply. And it's asking, do you want to go ahead? And yes, I want to go ahead. And hopefully it works. And it's sort of looking okay. So we'll just jump back to the portal and we should see that getting created. We go back to the main page. So staging portal. Okay, so you can see here the MCR is getting deployed in Singapore, but this is the staging environment, so it's not really getting deployed, but it's exactly the same look and feel and the same process. So that'll get deployed. It'll be up and running within 1 to 2 minutes, and this MCR go green, so that'll show that it's online. From a Terraform perspective, you can see it's completed. So that was pretty quick. It's resource 1 is added. Okay, so we jump back to the portal. That'll take a little while to fully complete and be available. But Terraform has deployed the code and it's happy with the state. So just one thing with the code. We mentioned around the Terraform state file earlier. So you can see here when Terraform deploys the infrastructure, it keeps a copy of the state, and this is saved here at terraform.tf state. And this currently saved locally on my laptop, but this is the deployed state. This is a combination of what you've obviously written in code, but also the data that Terraform has received back from the Megaport API. So there's a lot of data in here. So you can, it's best obviously to back this up. You can also, there's a number of different ways you can save the state remotely with Terraform. One of those being AWS S3. So I'll just Terraform, let's have a look here. S3 backup. So if you look in the HashiCorp docs, there's a section here, store state remotely, and it gives you examples of how to store the state in a number of different locations, right? So you've got Azure, and you've got AWS S3. It's just a matter of configuring this as part of your Terraform block that would be configured under here. And you'd have to also declare an AWS API key and key secret to interface with that. You also have to set up it's stored in a S3 bucket, so you have to set that up initially as well within the AWS console. But that's one way to store it remotely. So in terms of changing the configuration, so we run Terraform plan again, we should see that, you can see here, it knows from the state file, comparing the code and the state file, there's no changes. Okay. So we jump back to the code and say we want to change, the name, for example. We just get this, change that around, and we'll run that plan again. And you can see here, it is going to change the name. Okay, so we'll go ahead and run that. And it should run that pretty quickly. But if we jump back to the portal and refresh that, we should see that has been swapped around. Okay, which it has. Okay, so that's just a very simple example of changing something with Terraform. The next thing we're going to walk through is, okay, we've done this test in the Megaport staging environment. You can leave it there because every 24 hours, the staging environment will be reset. So everything will be deleted, and then whatever you have in your production account will be synced across, and you'll start fresh every day. So you can just leave whatever you want there, or you can come into Terraform and you can do a Terraform destroy, which will delete the MCR instantly. So we go back to the portal, we do a refresh. And you can see it's gone. Okay, so you can see there's pretty straightforward. You do a plan, apply, and destroy. So they're the main commands you'd be using with Terraform to apply, change, delete. The next thing is now you've built that code. If we go back to the environment, the Visual Studio Code, we can go ahead here and change this to production. And I'll just enter the production API key in secret. And I'll delete these keys after I finish, so that's okay. So now I've swapped the environment over to production. We've changed the keys over, and you could just create another block and comment it out to do that. And we'll run a Terraform plan against production, and looks good. So let's deploy that into production. What I'll do is go back to the portal. Let's log out of here and go over to the production portal. That is at portal.megaport.com. Miwa, do we have any questions at all?
Yep, I'll check it. There is one question. Also, are there any cost associated with deploying resources in portal staging side? Answer is no. There is no cost associated. That's why staging environment is the best place to start with.
Yeah,
I
so
hope
you can create, like I mentioned earlier, you can create a Megaport account instantly. So go to megaport.com, create an account. If you wait 24 hours, you can then log into portal-staging.megaport.com. So you need to wait 24 hours just for that to sync across to staging, and then you can start using the staging environment, and there's no cost. Completely no cost. You don't create anything real. You can create as much as you like. So this is the production portal. You can see there's no yellow line across the top, and you can see here we have deployed a real MCR at Equinix in Singapore, SG1, okay, in the red diversity zone. So that is being deployed. What I'll do is, given that's real and we don't want to keep it, I'll just go ahead and destroy. But basically, once you've deployed something, then you can add to it. So if we look at the Terraform, our Terraform GitHub page, if we look down here, you can see you start adding connections to it. So you want to build, you need to build out virtual cross connects from the MCR. And this example here is connecting to AWS Direct Connect. So the resource block is Megaport VXC. I've given it that name. And you declare an AN, which is the Megaport MCR, which references back to this resource. And you specify AN config. So this is the actual config of the MCR. So you're specifying an IP address for that virtual cross connect and BGP information to run BGP from the MCR to AWS Direct Connect. And then you're specifying a BN, which is the AWS Direct Connect on-ramp location. And there's a block here for specific configs such as your AWS account ID. So we know which account to land that VXC into. And all of this information, you can refer to that in the Terraform registry page for Megaport under resources. And if we go to VXC, you can look at what is required code and what is optional. So it's all documented here, and you can refer to that to build out your code. So that sort of covers the demos today. The only other thing I was going to walk through is just within Terraform, our Terraform docs page, there are some other guides here. So in regards to managing the state file, so there's a few different ways, or you can manage the drift of the file. So maybe someone will go to the portal and configure a service. It gets out of sync. There's ways to manage that state. There's also some recommended best practices here. So obviously backing up the state file, and there's also a way to lock the code. So if we go, yeah, so basically adding, if I go here, I'll just cover this one first. So within the Megaport portal, if you want to avoid deletion, you can always lock the service here. Within the code, there is also a way to lock the services, and I'll skip that one for now. But anyway, that's I think that's about me, Miwa.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mark. I would like to present the last slide just to cover recent update. Okay, so right. Are you seeing my last slide, recent update slide? Not yet?
Not yet.
Okay, how about now?
Yep, all
Okay,
good.
that's great. Hi, everybody. The latest Megaport Terraform provider version is version 1.4.6. And you can see in here the most recent version. And as Mark recommended, we always suggest you to use the most recent. Ensure to use the latest version in your Terraform configuration file. And we also announced the breaking change in August this year, location data source migration. Previously, you could use site underscore code, but now we only use the for recognition, identifying the actual location you are setting up your services, location ID. And to make it easier for your search for location ID, this Docs page have location ID page. You can search location ID from here. So for example, like next DC Brisbane B1 is number 5. You can type in the location name and search it. All right. And we also start supporting 400 gigabyte ports in locations where available after the version 1.4.4. This feature is available. And we also start, we also start supporting 48 months and 60 months contract terms for ports, VXCs, MCRs, and MVEs. And for better life cycle management, this is released. New feature MCR prefix filter list resources. It's available. The coding example is available in the GitHub. As Mark mentioned about to make sure to keep your live services intact to avoid accidental deletion, this is released recently and how it works. The coding is explained in here too. So please tune into GitHub all the time so that you can pick it up, the most up-to-date bug fix, new feature release, feature update, and some messaging too. So that's all from us. There are a few questions and answers held during this session. Thanks for Phil and Alex answering for those questions. If anyone will have more questions, please feel free to stay in this webinar. We'll keep this webinar open for next 15 minutes, and you can actually ask whatever the questions you have. And also, if you have encounter any questions while you are using the telephone, please feel free to submit your question to our support channel or use the GitHub, the issue page, so that you can raise your issue in here and our engineers will respond very quickly. And if there is a bugs, that's a very good source for us to learn from users and fix bugs quickly. All right, and okay, so next slide. The Megaport telephone provider release pages, please tune into it all the time. And the telephone provider FAQ page provides some standard FAQs there. And any comment or suggestion, please feel free to send it to me, miwafuji@megaport.com. And after this webinar is over, the pop-up survey would appear on your screen. It only takes 1 minute. It would be great if you can answer those questions. We would love to learn your feedbacks. And so thank you for participating in today's webinar. That's all from us.